Somewhere along your educational journey, you were probably exposed to a novel called War and Peace. It's a literary classic written by Leo Tolstoy about life in Russia when Napoleon Bonaparte's French army invaded in 1812. It's about life during a military conflict. War and peace are the topics of our day. On an international level, Russia is at war with Ukraine, Israel with Hamas and Iran, and just yesterday the U.S. struck 3 nuclear sites in Iran. Each day's news informs us of the most recent incidents in those wars and any movement towards ceasefires or peace treaties, conflicts needing to be resolved. On a national level, we have a political war going on over what America's future will be. One party is proud of who we are, seeking to preserve what's made our nation great. The other is unhappy, if not ashamed, of who we are, seeking to create a radically different future. That party's army consists of those politically poisoned against our country by our public schools and universities. The battle tactics are lawsuits and protests, many involving violence. The battleground is our federal court system and our cities, conflicts needing to be resolved. Relationships are often defined by war and peace. This includes friendships, this includes marriages, this includes relationships with parents and children, differences, hurt, conflict. Last week I talked about resolving conflict. This is the second of 2 messages on that topic. There'll be one more next Sunday. As we go through this message, I want you to think about the words I'm about to say. I will read it twice. I want you to hear it clearly. This is one person's synopsis of War and Peace, and it says this: no matter how deeply we hurt and how bleak the future may appear, there's always a way back to life through love if only we will allow ourselves to experience it. Say that again. No matter how deeply we hurt and how bleak the future may appear, there's always a way back to life through love if we'll only allow ourselves to experience it. So hold on to that idea. In James chapter 1, verse 19, the Bible tells us to be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger. For the anger of man, verse 20, does not achieve the righteousness of God. So there are 3 things to do when you differ with others, when you have conflict. Number 1, you need to tune in. Tune in. James 1:19 says, be quick to hear. Under that, I want to give you 3 ingredients, if you will, of hearing when there's conflict. The first is observation. Observation. Communication is about more than just words that you use. It's about tone of voice. It's about body language. Look at Proverbs 14:13. Even in laughter, the heart may be in pain. The words might say one thing, but the tone of voice could say another thing, or the body language could say something entirely different. This is why a phone conversation, if you have conflict, is always better than a letter or an email or a text. And it's why being in person, face to face, is far better than a phone call. You can't read body language in a phone call. You can't necessarily understand tone in a text. Now, some people might put exclamations and stuff like that, but you don't get the real picture. Yankee great Yogi Berra said you can observe a lot just by watching. And so in conflict, you need to watch somebody. Observation. Number 2, if we're going to tune in, we need clarification. Clarification. Ask questions. Help me to understand what you're saying. Last week we talked about being clear and honest. If you have to say, know what I mean, know what I mean, know what I mean, they don't know what you mean. In fact, if you say over and over, know what I mean, you don't know what you mean. You're maybe hoping they do because you don't. You're not being clear. You got to be clear. And your goal should be to understand where they're coming from, not just for them to understand where you're coming from. Write this somewhere. Seek to understand before you try to be understood. Seek to understand before you try to be understood. In some situations, the person that you're in conflict with, feeling like you finally understand them, is all they need. That's enough. Sometimes it isn't, but even if that's not enough, it's a great start. So clarification, understanding. And then number 3 is consideration. Consideration. You should seek to understand and care about the other person's feelings. And when they tell you how they feel, validate their feelings. Don't question or judge them. This happens all the time, men and women. A woman says, well, I feel such and such, such, such. And the guy says, well, you shouldn't feel that way. Guys, write you a note somewhere. Wrong answer. Nothing good happens after that answer. You shouldn't feel that way. In fact, they should. Because of what they've been through and how they think, that's why they feel the way they feel. If you were them and you'd been through what they've been through and you thought what they thought, you'd feel exactly like they do. You always validate the person's feelings. Well, I'm really sorry that you feel that way. I'm sorry that you're hurt, that you're angry, whatever else it might be. Don't ever say you shouldn't feel that way, because they do. The truth be told, in conflict, it's not uncommon for neither person to be observing, clarifying, or considering. Instead, what we're doing is, as they're talking, we're just hearing blah, blah, blah. And while they're talking, we're forming our next argument, because the goal is to convince them that we're right. That's our goal, which is the wrong goal. Look at Proverbs 18:2. A fool does not delight in understanding, but only in revealing his own mind. When we're doing that, we're foolish. We're not trying to understand. We just want them to know what we think. The fool thinks he knows everything he needs to know and that he's right. And he's usually wrong about both. So don't be one. You can learn a lot by listening. Be quick to hear, tune in. Now, number 2. Second thing you need to do is tone down. Tone down. In James 1:19 it says, be slow to speak. In a previous message, I said this: hear before you think before you speak, and say what you'll mean later instead of what you feel right now. So we can say, well, think before you speak. No, hear before you think. Because if you're not hearing what they're saying, you're not thinking the right things, and so you're not going to say what you really ought to say. So you hear before you think before you speak, and when you speak, you don't say what you're feeling right now. There's all kinds of bad stuff comes out of that. You're saying what you'll mean later when you're not mad and angry. Look at these verses. Proverbs 10:19. When there are many words, transgression is unavoidable. But he who restrains his lips is wise. Proverbs 17:27. He restrains his words has knowledge, and he who has a cool spirit is a man of understanding. Holding back his words, few words, remaining cool, toning down. Proverbs 21:23. He who guards his mouth and his tongue guards his soul from troubles. He who doesn't creates troubles. When in conflict, the less said, the best said. Write that down. Less said, best said. The more you talk, the more likely you're going to hit a nerve. Less said, best said. Now we talked last week about the prodigal son and how he, when he went back to his father, he finally hit the bottom, and he rehearsed exactly what he was going to say when he saw his father. And then when he went back to see him, he said exactly what he rehearsed. It's a really good idea to write down your feelings and what you want to say to that person. It's a really bad idea to send it to them. It's a really good idea to write it down. So now you can go back over it, and you're saying exactly what you want to say. You've tried to make it really clear. You've tried not to make it accusatory. And so this is how you feel. So what you do is when you get with them, you read that to them, but you don't send it to them. You don't document the problem. which is what you do when you send something like that out. And most people, how would they do it today? They'll fire off a text. And what they've done is just started another argument. Or they'll send an email or whatever else it'll be. Don't send it, but it's okay to write it. It's really smart to write it because then you're saying exactly what you want to say. Most of us aren't sharp enough to say the exact thing we want to say off the cuff. So write it down, but just don't send it. Guard your mouth and you'll save your soul from a lot of trouble. If you've admitted your fault and you've apologized, there's no need to say anything else. After that, you just say, I'm sorry. She brings it up again. He brings it up again. I'm sorry. Hey, bring it up again. I'm sorry. See, what we want to do is we want to restart the argument because we're just convinced if we can talk long enough and some of us loud enough, they will buy our end of the story. No, the more you talk, the madder they'll get. Because all they'll see and feel is you defending yourself. Quit defending yourself. I'm sorry. I did the wrong thing. I said the wrong thing. I shouldn't have done that. I'm definitely sorry that I hurt you. I'm sorry. After that, they bring it up. I'm sorry. After that, they bring it up. I'm sorry. I recently told a pastor who was in hot water what he ought to do with his church who was about to vote him out. I told him, just get up and say you're wrong. Tell them you're sorry. Tell them you're sorry people got hurt. You're sorry about what you did. And ask him, say, I don't deserve one, but I'm hoping you might give me another chance. Well, as you can imagine, that didn't happen. And it didn't end well. Stop trying to explain yourself. I'm sorry. I'm just sorry. Most of us, after conflict, need some time for our emotions, how we feel, to catch up with our heads. So, for example, if I decide, if you hurt me and I decide to forgive you, that's a choice that I've made, and I really mean it. But it might take days for my emotions to catch up. I still feel hurt, maybe angry, whatever else I was feeling. I don't just, when you forgive, you go, oop, perfect. All of a sudden your emotions go right back to perfect. It doesn't happen that way. So, I forgive you, but it may take days. It may take weeks for my emotions to catch up. Never become the judge of other people's emotions. That's a part of that. You shouldn't feel that way. Somebody loses a loved one. And somebody thinks they ought to get over it faster than they're getting over it. Well, you ought to be over that by now. Who made you the judge of how people feel? Answer, nobody. You're not the judge. You've got to give people time to grieve. Everybody grieves, different ways. I'm pretty resilient. I get hurt. I'll bounce back faster than most people. But because I do doesn't mean I should expect everybody else to. You got to let people take their journey when they're hurt. And in a marriage, there may be a big argument that you go through. You finally come to some agreement, but it may be a month before you feel like you wished you felt. Give that person time for their emotions to catch up with their head. Give them space and time. Under toning down, I want to say 4 things. The first one's going to shock some of you. You ready? Remember that you're not always right. Remember that you're not always right. I'm not, you're not, nobody is. What you think and feel are sometimes not how you should think and feel. How I should think and feel. Your way is not the only way to do something. It may not be the right way, there may not be a right way, and it may not be the best way. And you'll save yourself a lot of fights if you'll understand that. But no, it's got to be your way because you're right about everything. There's one thing worse than being married to Mr. Right or Mrs. Right, and that is being married to Mr. or Mrs. Right about everything. And some people have been married to that person. We saw last week we're to care more about others than we do our opinions. We lose relationships because we die on hills we shouldn't even be fighting on. If you care more about your opinions than people, you're going to lose the people in your life. Just count on it. The solution to conflict is love. Remember the War and Peace statement? Look at 1 Corinthians 13:4. Love does not brag. Again in verse 4, love is not arrogant. Someone who loves God as he should doesn't get impressed with himself. If you're loving God like you should love Him, you're not impressed with yourself. If you're impressed with yourself, you're loving you, and you're impressed with how much you're loving God. See how subtle that is? The person impressed with himself loves himself more than he loves God, and he loves other people. Well, you're supposed to love other people more. You're not always right. Don't brag. Don't be arrogant. Look at Proverbs 12:15. The way of a fool is right in his own eyes, but a wise man is he who listens to counsel. The way of a fool is right in his own eyes. Listen to what I'm about to say. Wise and smart people know that they don't know everything, and that there are people who know a lot more than they do. Say it again. Wise and smart people know that they don't know everything, and that other people know way more than they do. But here's the problem. You got to be wise enough to know you're not that wise. If you're not very smart, you think you're real smart. If you're real smart, you know you're not. You see what I'm saying? Some people aren't smart enough to know how smart they're not. They're not wise enough to know how unwise they are. The smarter and wiser you are, the more you will ask others for their advice and opinions, and the more you will follow the advice of others. Look at Proverbs 18:1. He who separates himself seeks his own desire, and he quarrels against all sound wisdom. In other words, he doesn't listen to anybody. You're not always right. Number 2, remember that we all mess up. We all mess up. I do, you do, they do. It's not just others who don't always get it right, it's us. I'm going to say this twice. This is my favorite part of the message in case you want to know. If you married somebody who believes he or she never messes up, you did. If you marry somebody who never believes that he or she never messes up, you did. God help your soul. Ecclesiastes 7:20 tells us that there's not a righteous man on earth who continually does good and who never sins. Not one. That means me, that means you. Romans 3:23 tells us that we all have sinned and we all still do. James 3:2 says that we all stumble in many ways. And by the way, the Greek word all, in the Greek it means all. All of us, no exceptions. 1 Corinthians 13 again, verse 4, love is patient. We're talking about messing up. Love is patient. Verse 5, love does not take into account a wrong suffered. In other words, when you love somebody, you don't keep score of the hurts. You let them go. Avoid getting hysterical, animated, and historical, bringing up past hurts into this conflict. Some people get historical, and so now they're bringing up things from 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 20 years ago, bringing it into this conflict. Don't do that. You create more conflict when you do that. The fact that we sometimes hurt others should make us a lot more patient when others hurt us. And again, if you think you never hurt anybody, you're not patient with anybody who hurt you. But once you understand you hurt others too, then you go, you know what? They're on that end this time. I could be on that. I've been on that end before too, and we'll be again. We all mess up. What else can we learn from toning down? Number 3, we should always be nice. Be nice. 1 Corinthians 13:4, love is kind. Verse 5, love does not act unbecomingly. When there's conflict, you won't feel like being nice. Probably. You'll feel like attacking. You'll feel like zinging. They zing you, you won't zing them back. Be nice. You can always choose to be nice. Even if inside you feel like your lid's about to blow, you can choose to be nice. Being nice de-escalates conflict. Being unkind and angry escalates conflict. We probably all created a greater conflict sometimes in the past because we tried to resolve it the wrong way. Every one of us with age, somewhere in the past, there was a conflict. We handled it poorly. We thought we were being smart. We handled it poorly, and now it's a greater conflict than when we first started. Look at these verses. Proverbs 15:1, a gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. You zing them, they zing you. Then you got to up their zing. Then they got to up your zing. And so rather than the conflict de-escalating toward peace, it's escalating toward more anger. Proverbs 29:22 says, an angry man stirs up strife, a hot-tempered man abounds in transgression. So be nice, even when you don't feel like it, especially when you don't feel like it. When you feel least like being nice, it's the most important time ever to be nice. Because if you're not, you're about to make this war far bigger than it currently is. I cannot control what I feel. Feelings, we just feel them. Right, wrong, indifferent. Your feelings are true. They're not right all the time, but they're true. They're real. So we can't control what we feel. We feel things we don't want to feel and don't feel some things we ought to want to feel. But we always have control over what we say and how we treat somebody. We always have control over that. There are a lot of words that just need to be kept inside your head. Jot down Luke 6:35. I don't like this verse. There's a lot of verses the Bible I don't like. Here's one of them. It says there that God is kind even to ungrateful and evil men. I don't particularly like being kind to either one of those categories. But God is. So if you're going to be like Him, you've got to be nice. Now here's the fourth one. This one's fun too. Don't be an idiot. Don't be an idiot. It's biblical. In 1 Corinthians 13:5 says, love does not seek its own. The Greek word translated own is the Greek word idios, from which we get our word idiot. A biblical idiot is somebody who lives and does what he does for himself. He's a selfish person. Love doesn't do that. Now, he may well disguise his selfishness, but he does so he can use people. He doesn't really love them. A person can appear to love someone well when, frankly, he's just being crafty in order to get something out of that other person. Guys, these Romeo guys can do this with girls. Oh, they'll just convince them, oh, I'm so in love with you. No, they're not. They're going to use you, and they've learned how to do it. They're crafty. And you're just going to be another notch on their proverbial gun. They don't love you. They're going to use you. They love you. They'll wait, pledge their life to you, give you a ring, buy you a house. How about that? If I only love you so that you'll love me, am I not just loving me? If I only love you so that you'll love me, all I'm doing is manipulating you so you'll love me so I can feel loved because I love me. Now we both agree, we both love me. This is great. It's not real love. That person says, I'm the point, not you. Love is other-centered. It does things for others even when it gets no personal benefit for doing it. So it's kind of what we do at our Christmas parties. We go up there and we feel good doing it, but we give all this money, spend all this time, bless all these underprivileged people, give them all this stuff. We don't get much of anything out of it. They do. But you know what? That's what love does. Love doesn't do something to get something back. Love does something to do something. We should do what we do, not for what we get from it, but for who we become by it. Say it again. We should do what we do, not for what we get from it, because sometimes you do the right thing and you don't get anything from it. You think, well, if I do this, they'll do that. Well, they don't. But it's still what you should have done. It's not for what we get from it. It's for who we become by it. Philippians 2:3, do nothing from selfishness or empty conceit. Don't be an idiot. There's another way you could translate that. But regard one another as more important than yourselves. Idiots don't do that. So if you're an idiot, thinking only of yourself in conflict resolution, you're going to create more conflict. And probably all of us have been an idiot once, if we have any time behind us. Love thinks about the other person. Love wants them to win. Love wants them to be happy. Love is flexible. Love is forgiving. Look at these two verses. 1 Corinthians 13:7, love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. 1 Peter 4:8, love covers a multitude of sins. When it's not love, we keep bringing them back up so we can use them for fuel to zing the person we're mad at. Tune in, observe, clarify, consider, tone down. Remember, none of us is always right, and we all mess up sometimes, even if we're not trying to. Be nice. Actually love the other person. Want their happiness just as much as you want your own. Don't be a self-serving idiot. So every time you get in conflict, I hope that's the first thing you'll think, am I going to be an idiot? And if your goal is to win the conflict, congratulations. You are one at that moment. You're an idiot. Because you cared more about being right, more about winning than you cared about the other person, and God was not pleased with it. Now here's the third thing. Tune in, tone down. Number 3 is lighten up. In James 1:20 says, the anger of man does not achieve the righteousness of God. Listen closely. Conflict is common in relationships. It's so fun to watch young newlyweds. They get married and they just think, oh, this is heaven. You know, we're gonna be married all of our lives and we're never going to disagree about anything. And there's never going to be a problem. You get about a year and they're going, what in the world has happened? Am I in the right room? It's not conflict, it's common. You're going to have it. Hopefully, as you age, you'll have less and less of it. Conflict is not to the end of the world, and is seldom the end of the relationship. The issue is one difference among many differences that you're going to have over the course of a relationship, especially if you're married. So the next time you have one, rather than think this is the end of the world, if he doesn't see it like I see it or she sees it like I see it, say, you know what? This is one difference. We've had many before, and if we live long enough, there will be many to come. God has a sense of humor when He puts people together, doesn't He? He has the quiet person and the yeller. Came from 2 different households. He has the spender and the saver. He got the early riser and the late go-to-bedder. And we can just go down the list. People say, well, I believe marriage is made in heaven. Well, somebody said soul's thunder and lightning. But anyway, that's another story. This is one difference of many over the course of a relationship. See, that puts it in perspective. That takes the awfulness out of it. Takes the weight out of it. This is another one, and there'll be more. We've made it through the others. We'll make it through this one. We'll make it through the next one. Listen, I'll say this twice. When we make too much of differences, we tend to get angry. And when we get angry, the differences become bigger than they really are. When we make too much of the difference, whatever it is we disagree on, we become angry. And then once we become angry, we blow it way out of proportion. So what is a size 4 problem becomes a size 10 problem. It escalates. As I said last week, the younger we are, the more likely we are to have conflict because we tend to see everything as important. When you get age on you, you realize there are very few hills worth dying on. Almost none. There are very few battles to fight. Almost none. Husband, you can be a man, and a lot of times this is what you need to do. You just need to scroll down and hit I agree and get out of there. Okay? Does it really matter? If you'll think about the last 5 things you've thought about, I promise you 4 of them really don't matter, probably 5. And looking back, without being mad right now, you ought to see how absolutely silly it was for y'all to fight about that. We fight over things that don't matter. With age and experience, if you grow up and mature, you'll realize most things don't matter. Most fights are not over important issues. They're about somebody's pride and somebody's need to be right. It's about somebody's pride, I've got to win, and their need to be right. If you want a great marriage, you got to care more about us being right than you do you being right. And if you don't, you're not going to have a great marriage. You might have one that stays together, but you're going to have a great one. Look at Ephesians 4:26. Be angry, and yet do not sin. Do not let sun go down your anger. Verse 27, do not give the devil an opportunity. I talked about this last week. We are going to feel angry at times. When you do, you got to self-regulate. The Bible talks about taking thoughts captive to the obedience of Christ. You have to take your emotions captive to the obedience of Christ. This is what I feel like doing. Is it what I should do? No, then I will not. If you keep obsessing over the issue, you give the devil an opportunity to do damage to the relationship that you might not be able to undo. Jan Sylvius calls this the Humpty Dumpty principle. Sometimes things break and all the king's horses and all the king's men can't put it back together again. Marriage is fragile. You know, we like to think of marriage as a hard rubber ball. You can just bounce it off stuff and sling it off walls. Nothing's going to hurt it. No, marriage is more like a piece of crystal. You can shatter it pretty easily. Just doing the wrong thing at the wrong time, the wrong way. In almost every instance, you should say to yourself, this really isn't that big a deal. I'm just going to let it go. It really isn't that big a deal. I'm going to let it go. Write this down somewhere. Everybody's putting up with something. In your marriage, you're putting up with something in your mate that isn't optimal to you. You could probably make a short list really quick. Everybody's putting up with something. They're putting up with something in you. So don't act like they're supposed to be perfect because you are. No, again, if you married somebody who never messes up, you did. Being angry is not a sign that we're right or we're strong. Being angry is a weakness of character. Think about this. If you're right, you shouldn't need to be right. If you're right, why do you have to prove yourself to be right? I got to prove myself to be right because I'm not sure I'm right, but I want to be right, and I think if I'm not right, I'm nobody. You can be not right a lot and be somebody. Don't get angry. 2 things under lightening up. Number 1, anger reveals a foolish heart. Ecclesiastes 7:9, anger resides in the bosom of fools. You made me angry. No, they shook anger out of you. If I had a glass of water up here and it was half full in a glass and had somebody hold it, and I said, and I shook their arm, what would happen? The water would slosh out. And I'd say, why did the water come out? Because you shook my arm. No, the water came out because water was in it. Your spouse, your children, your parents cannot shake anything out of you that's not in you. They don't make you angry. They expose your anger. And most all of us got a lot of it. Some of it buried really, really deep. Anger resides in the bosom of fools. It's a lack of character quality. Number 2, anger reveals a weakness of character. I thought anger was strong. No, it's a weakness of character. Proverbs 16:32, he who is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and he who rules his spirit, controls his emotions, than he who captures a city. Being able to control your emotions is a far greater strength than physical might. So maybe you see some guy's a bodybuilder, great big guy, chiseled muscles and all that. Boy, he's strong, isn't he? He may be as weak as when you say weak as water, emotionally. A far greater strength than physical might is the ability to manage your emotions and therefore your mouth. Proverbs 15:18 says, a hot-tempered man stirs up strife, but the slow of anger calms a dispute. During anger, you either throw gasoline or water on the fire. Too many people throw gasoline. Then you just eventually got a wildfire that might get out of control. Having control of your emotions helps you to regulate the temperature of the conversation. You amp up, they'll amp up. You calm down, hopefully they'll calm down. Here's something really important to understand. Anger is almost always fear or sadness turned outward. It's almost always fear or sadness turned outward. We get angry when we're afraid. Your teenage kid comes home, they've been in a bad wreck, but they're okay. You're angry. You're raging angry about it. You know why you're angry? It's not because the car's damaged, you got insurance, you can get that fixed. It's because you might have lost them. That's why you're angry. You're afraid of what might have happened. You see that? That's real important to see. Every time you're angry, you need to ask yourself, am I afraid or am I sad? And you might be both. The car could be repaired, but not a lost life. Sometimes we express anger when we're actually just sad. We're sad about a loss or a circumstance that we can't change. We all have those. But sadness feels weak. Anger feels strong. So we get mad. Mad is often a cover-up for sad. It feels strong to rage. It feels weak to grieve and weep, which is what you need to do. You need to grieve and weep. But no, you're mad at God. You're mad at whoever else was involved in this. You're mad at somebody. No, the truth is you're just sad and you don't know what to do with yourself. That's some great stuff if you'll hang on to it. That's why we get angry when someone we love dies. It's sadness turned outward. So what do we leave here with today? Tune in. Actually listen and hear what the other person is saying. To love that person is to care much about understanding them as you do about being understood. Philippians, consider the other person more important than yourself. Much of the battle is won if both people just feel heard. I've had couples come to me over the years, and typically it's her. She would describe to me how she felt about something. I would acknowledge it and understand it. And it was like she would just go, finally somebody heard me. Because she never felt like her husband did. Why? Because he was too busy defending himself, because if he wasn't perfect, he would lose her. Now, he might be about to lose her because of that attitude. That makes sense? Hear before you think, and then say what you'll mean when you're no longer hurt and mad. So tune in. Then tone down. Speak softly. Don't throw verbal hand grenades. Proverbs 18:21 says that death and life are in the power of the tongue. You know, we used to learn the little rhymes when we were little. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. You'll never hear an adult say that. No adult believes that. Bones, broken bones heal. But there's words your parents spoke to you, or some other person spoke to you that you're still not healed of years and years and years later. Death and life are in the power of the tongue. So choose your words wisely. Less said, best said. Remember that you may be wrong, not right. It's possible. Remember that you mess up and you need grace sometimes, just like they may now need grace because they've messed up too. Care more about the relationship than being right. Be nice. Don't be selfish. Once you've admitted your fault, said that you're sorry, quit trying to explain and defend yourself. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Rehashing can reignite and re-energize conflict. Here we go again. Round and round we go. And lighten up. If you're married, this is one conflict among a number of conflicts you'll have over the course of your marriage. It'll only sink the ship if you'll let it. It'll only sink the ship if you'll let it. People who divorce don't always have the biggest problems. They have the lesser problem-solving skills. Often people with bigger problems than they have made it because they had better problem-solving skills. Pride keeps the conflict going. Humility, forgiveness, grace, and love disarm conflict. Manage your emotions and your mouth. Don't allow what you feel, the anger, to result in behavior that escalates the problem and keeps you from what you want, which is this relationship to be good. I need to say that again. Don't allow what you feel, this anger, result in behavior that escalates the problems and keeps you from what you really want, which is this relationship to be good. Bill Stafford, some of you know who Bill Stafford is, an evangelist. He's with the Lord now. Quite the character. God made only one of him, that's for sure. He used to joke that the bride and groom, when they leave the marriage altar, the song they ought to leave the altar to was called "The War Is On." Probably not a bad pick. I'm going to say this twice. This is really, really good. Becoming one flesh is found on the other side of a lot of differences worked through, grace extended, forgiveness given, and things let go of. Say it again. Becoming one flesh is found on the other side. If you don't work through this stuff, you never get there. It's found on the other side of a lot of differences worked through, grace extended, forgiveness given, and things let go of. I close with the synopsis of War and Peace that I gave you at the start of the message. No matter how deeply we hurt and how bleak the future may appear, there's always a way back to life through love if only we will allow ourselves to experience it.